All right, we are on Nightwave Volume 7, which we got not long after Jade Shadows came out, and since Jade Shadows involved the Stalker, obviously Nightwave rewards are going to be heavily Stalker themed. So, within this, along with all of our fun little cosmetic
Over
things that we
here.
usually
I
get,
don't have a
and
line.
nice little bonuses here and there to help you out with your Warframe gaming. We also got a couple of unique augments. One for the Hate, which is the one that we're looking at today, and there's one all the way up here for the Dread as well, which I haven't got yet, but I will get that eventually. I'm less excited about that one, but that's a story for another time. The Dread augment is at reward tier 25, and the Hate augment is at reward tier 15. So you do have to go a ways in to get these, but well, I'll spoil things a little bit for you before we actually look at everything. I think that the Burning Hate augment is good. Now, I'm not sure if it's going to be quite as beneficial if you are using the normal hate as opposed to the hate Incarnon, but I'll talk about that a little bit after we discuss how I put a couple of these builds together. I have a normal light heavy mix attack build to show, as well as just a pure heavy attack build, both, of course, on the Incarnon form. So we'll start with the light heavy attack setup. Reaping Spiral is what this weapon is already polarized for, and that is very useful to combine with Melee Afflictions because of the neutral combo. So Melee Afflictions allows you to apply additional status effect stacks on Lift or Knockdown, and we get both Lift and Knockdown in this combo, along with some nice damage multipliers. You also have guaranteed knockdown and guaranteed slash status on your heavy attacks, along with a huge damage multiplier, which is why scythes are usually uh, one of the best weapons to use for just pure heavy attack builds. This is nice to also include in here with Tennokai mods, but it's not entirely necessary. The important thing to note is that if you were going to use melee afflictions like I am, you really want to focus on utilizing the neutral combo as opposed to the forward combo because you do not get lift or knockdown on your forward combo. So with that, most of how this is set up is pretty normal. Primed Reach because it just feels good on everything. Blood Rush for crit chance, Weeping Wounds for status chance, Organ Shatter for crit damage, Berserker Fury, good on everything, but especially on slow weapons, it makes them just a little bit more tolerable to use, and the Hate is definitely not fast. Melee Elementalist, which does the same thing as the Burning Hate augment, just at a lower degree. And the Burning Hate augment specifically, since we haven't quite talked about the details yet, gives more status damage to enemies that are on fire. Now, there's a couple of ways that we can do that just with the weapon alone. I have it modded for heat damage, which I'll talk about more in just a moment, but you can do that either with modding for heat damage, you can use a status primer that applies heat damage, use a Warframe, or you could utilize the spectral daggers that the Hate Incarnon throws out with its forward and neutral attacks. So with both Burning Hate and Melee Elementalist on here, we are getting 210% additional status damage. And that is specifically, like it says right here, damage dealt by the status effects. We're going to be getting slash and heat status effects on enemies. Those are going to get a huge boost in damage. And since we're boosting that damage already, Melee Afflictions adds stacks to those status effects, even the ones that do damage over time, not like some of the other status stacking things that we have. And then finally, if you have Tennokai mods to throw in here, you might as well. It's pretty much just down to personal preference in the end. I enjoy Discipline's Merit because we get huge heavy attack damage on scythes, plus that guaranteed knockdown from more status stacks, so why not? Now, as I was saying, the Hate Incarnon has a special effect when you activate the Incarnon form where it throws these exploding spectral blades. Half of the damage comes from direct impact from the blades, and the other half comes from the explosion that happens after the blades hit something. So, the blades actually hitting the target utilizes whatever damage types your weapon is modded for. So, in this case, we'd be mostly getting heat damage and slash damage on the blade impact. And then the explosions from the blades are all heat damage, and you can apply heat status with those explosions, which is why you don't have to modify your weapon to have heat damage on it or utilize a status primer if you are using those exploding blades. The thing is, since we're focusing so heavily on doing status damage, I figured why not just add on more elemental damage on the weapon to get more status effects? I think it feels really good, and we'll show that off in just a second. It's very easy to build up to your max combo with this weapon if you utilize Swordsman's Flourish, because you get the double combo count chance with your weapon equipped. And what's important to note about that is you have to actually hard equip your weapon. If you are doing quick swapping between using a primer and using a melee weapon, you do not get that bonus. So that's another reason why it's worth trying to have everything self-contained with a setup like this if you're using that. You don't have to, but I think it feels really good that way, being able to build it up super fast. Or it can reach on the third evolution. This is one that you could swap around just depending on what you feel is more useful for you. Normally, range is the way to go for everything, but if you really, really want to focus on the heavy attack build, you can throw in Swift Break for more wind-up speed, and then we've got Subtle Force for crit chance and status chance. You can, in here, go for Absolute Valor to boost only your crit chance, which is the best thing to do if you're going to do a heavy attack focused build, and I'll show that off after we're done with this setup. Otherwise, I would do Subtle Force if you're not going to do heavy attacks. Absolute Dominion is nice, but the thing is, your damage that you deal with your weapon is going to determine the damage that the status effects deal, so getting lots of good critical hits is going to get more status damage than just having more status chance on the weapon. Plus, with the 30% status chance that we have from Subtle Force, I believe it's something like 110 or 115% status chance when you are at your 12x multiplier with Weeping Wounds. And again, since we're getting status effects from the Spectral Blades and the blade itself, the scythe, then going even heavier on the status chance just doesn't feel worth it to lose that extra crit chance. So this is what we're going to use, and I'm going to be showing this off against the Hollow Vein enemies from the Murmur, because they're not vulnerable to heat damage, but they do have a shit ton of health without having armor. You probably noticed this before when you're fighting against these guys. Whenever they show up, they're hard to kill for the most part, even unless you have something that is made specifically just to do tons and tons of damage. So we got to get in here, get the Incarnon form activated, and then start swinging. You really want to make sure you're utilizing your neutral attacks. You cannot lift Hollow Vein enemies, but you can knock them down, which you're seeing from part of that combo as well as from the heavy attacks. The heavy attacks will apply multiple stacks of slash status, which is part of why Melee Afflictions is so good for heavy attack builds, but it also works great for this. So even with level 205 Hollow Vein enemies, with this setup that we use, we're just dicing right through them. They're not meant to die quickly because they have so much health, and I wouldn't say that was the fastest way that you can kill a Hollow Vein enemy, since, again, they're not specifically vulnerable to slash or heat, but that's why I wanted to use them to show this off, because they don't take extra damage from the two main damage sources we have on this setup, and it still is killing them pretty effectively. So this is a lot of fun to use. This is my preferred way to use the hate with this light-heavy mix. So is it the best way to use it? Honestly, I'm divided, because obviously the hate is also really good as a pure heavy attack weapon, and we're going to show that off as well. So the one reason why I prefer to use a normal setup as opposed to a pure heavy attack setup is, again, because of getting that heat damage and heat status effects from the Spectral Blades in the Incarnon form. You do not get those blades from using heavy attacks, which means if you're going to use a setup like this, you need to have some sort of primer that will deal heat status to your enemies to get the Burning Hate effect to activate on them. Otherwise, everything else is pretty much the same that you would expect from a heavy attack build. The new Galvanized Reflex, because this is amazing for any heavy attack build. Primed Reach, Killing Blow, Amalgam Organ Shatter to speed things up. Sack Steel, Melee Elementalist with that extra attack speed windup, which is really nice. Condition Overload, if we're going to use a status primer, might as well make it good. And Burning Hate, and of course Melee Afflictions, because again, the Fading Hope heavy attack has guaranteed knockdown, and that knockdown will make the status effect, the slash status that the heavy attack applies, be applied multiple times. It doesn't have to already be on them. It will duplicate the effects even on the same attack. So the Melee Afflictions essentially gives you 6 times more damage from the damage, the status effects from your heavy attacks, which is huge. So Again, like I was talking about before, a pure heavy attack build on this definitely benefits from more crit chance since we have guaranteed status chance for the slash. So we're going to swap over, get that base 40% crit chance. Now we're up to 128% from sack steel, and keep in mind that the bonuses from crit chance for mods are doubled on heavy attacks. So we're probably looking at I think 216% crit chance on your heavy attacks, which is really nice. And then I'm also going to be using the epitaph for very quick and easy status priming. This is going to help with condition overload, getting lots of damage in there. And I made sure to specifically mod this for heat, so we should be able to get some heat status in there easily without having to use Ember and have some fun. We're not going to be getting the increased combo count since we're going to be quick swapping, but we don't need the extra combo really. We're going to just quickly hit some enemies to get this built up to the Incarnon form. Prime these guys, and heavy attack away. Now again, like we were talking about, the Hollow Vein enemies are not specifically vulnerable to heat or slash status, so it's not like this weapon is going to be made specifically to kill them super quickly, and yet you are still able to take them down in a reasonable amount of time with these heavy attacks, just because of how much damage we're doing with the setup. So we'll throw them out there one more time, just get a little more demonstration of what's going on here. We're getting some numbers that get close to 1 million damage on these hits. And obviously, enemies that you are coming across that are weaker than this in a group are going to die very quickly. I am kind of exaggerating things here a little bit just to give you an idea of just how much damage you can actually put out with all this extra damage over time. It's really not the heavy attacks that are killing them, it's the slash status being applied to them. I'm kind of just working my way through the group, applying slash to all of them, and then just kind of slowly walking away as they all bleed to death. So there is definitely other heavy attack weapons that will do more damage on a single hit, which is one of the other reasons why I'm not sure this is my favorite weapon to use heavy attacks on. But if that's what you like to do, if you already have a heavy attack build for your hate Incarnon, then you might want to try to piece things together from there to make that happen. And I definitely suggest using Absolute Valor to get that extra crit chance in there, so you're always doing lots of damage. But again, if you're just concerned about pure heavy attack damage, Harmony still wins hands down. That weapon is just completely goofy with how it's working currently. So if you want to do heavy attacks, go right ahead. Nothing wrong with it at all. As you can see, it does great damage. I think that doing a light-heavy mix is a lot more fun. It really plays into the effects that the Hate Incarnon wants to use, and it does really good damage as well, with both heat damage over time and slash damage over time. Take your pick your poison. They're both good. The Burning Hate Augment is good. Obviously, I'm only using it on the Incarnon version right now, so I don't know if it's going to be as useful on the normal hate, since you have a base status chance of 20% that you can't increase with your Incarnon evolutions. I'm sure you can still get some good use out of it, especially if you are doing status priming, like with an epitaph or something similar, to get heat damage on the enemy, so you don't have to worry about botting for it, and you don't have to worry about having lots of status chance on a standard hate. So if you're already working your way towards that, and you don't have the Incarnon version yet, I would imagine it's still going to be very useful. It just probably isn't going to be anywhere as powerful as this, but that's kind of what we come to expect with Incarnon weapons now. So there you go. I'm not sure about the Dread Augment yet. It's pretty far up there. This is still a ways into the Nightwave, having to get halfway through the reward tiers at tier 15, but it feels really damn good, and I haven't been using the hate much before now, but I think I might start putting this into my rotations a little bit more. Maybe throw it on Coolervo and go do some Metra cells with it. It sounds like a lot of fun.